emergency?
There's a house that's on fire on the other side of the fence. There's fire coming out of the window. I think I heard screaming and crying. I don't know.
Did it sound like it was coming from the resident?
Yeah, I think so.
The lead detective called me. He said there was an accident in your parents' house. And he said there was a fire. Your parents didn't make it. I just started hysterically crying. So I flew up on the first flight out the next day, and that's when they told us what had really happened. The fire wasn't an accident. My parents had been shot, and the fire was a cover.
How, why, and who?
Neighbors on this usually quiet street are stunned.
It's not real. I wanted to know why this happened to Scott and Janet. I wanted to know who did this. They were great people. They were giving people, and that's not the way it's supposed to go.
Did your parents have any kind of conflict with people that might want to hurt them?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
It didn't make sense that this could or would happen.
How soon did investigators focus on Brandon Pettit as the killer?
Instantly. They focused on Brandon as soon as one of the neighbors said, oh, they have a son that's weird.
Is there any physical evidence that ties your brother to the murder?
No.
There is no DNA, there are no fingerprints, there is no blood. But what you do have here is a litany of statements and actions that point to Brandon.
The most damaging evidence against Brandon came out of his own mouth.
He's terrible in his ability to figure out what's appropriate.
He referred to his parents as and that he wanted his dad dead. I mean, and this is like just a few weeks before the murder.
You have more than once, before your parents died, said, wish my parents were dead. A lot of people say that about their parents.
It's clear that your brother isn't like everyone else, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. He told them he had Asperger's.
When somebody's autistic, they're different than you. He doesn't act the same way as you or I might act.
Here's your dad laying on a body bag, and you know what? You're already past it. I'm not past it. You have no emotional response. Do you want me to break down and cry? Because I don't normally cry.
Autism is the reason they focused on him. It's the reason that they became convinced that he was guilty.
I don't know who killed my parents. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes. No. Yes. No.
Your brother was working that night, right? He has an alibi.
Yeah.
You murdered your parents. I didn't do anything.
He intended it, he desired it, and he did it.
I think there's a lot more to this story.
I loved my parents.
Words don't make you a murderer.
The morning of August 8, 2013, had started out full of promise for then 28-year-old Lauren Pettit living in Los Angeles.
I remember I had texted one of my best friends that morning, today's gonna be a good day.
What she didn't know was that 300 miles away in Modesto, California, firefighters had been called to her parents' home at 3 in the morning. Their bedroom had gone up in flames.
Fire crews still trying to determine where that fire started. We were told that 3 investigators are on scene.
Lauren's parents, Scott and Janet Pettit, were found dead inside. How would you describe your mom and dad? You really miss them, don't you?
They were amazing.
Two of the family's dogs also didn't make it, but one, Bailey, survived.
Is it kind of a miracle she's even here?
It's insane.
Bailey means a lot to you now.
Everything. She's like my lifeline.
Mike Anderson, a close friend of the family, had arrived at the scene after getting a call that something terrible had happened.
When I turned on to Scott and Janet Street, there was fire trucks, ambulances, and so my heart sank. I'm gonna say it's like losing an arm or something. You lose a part of your soul, a part of your body. And that's what it felt like. This can't be happening. But it was.
And things only got worse. Investigators soon determined the fire was no accident. Scott and Janet had been shot a total of 7 times, and evidence of an accelerant was found throughout their upstairs room.
More than 12 hours after firefighters made the gruesome discovery, police investigators remain sifting through clues in what they are now calling a pair of suspicious deaths.
The community lost 2 people that did more for their communities than hundreds of people will ever do.
Scott was an avid car collector and owner of a martial arts studio in nearby Riverbank. The local paper once called him Citizen of the Year. Janet, a neonatal nurse, had recently earned her PhD.
When you think about your mom, what comes to mind?
She was just incredible, very caring and selfless. My dad was very sarcastic, very witty, loved to give back, loved to help everyone.
The couple had been in their late 20s when they first met. Scott was working as a paramedic then.
I believe the story is he was bringing a baby in from the ambulance, and she was one of the receiving nurses.
The two would later marry and start a family. Lauren was 2 years old when her brother Brandon was born, and the family was complete.
Your mom writes, Lauren was so excited to have her baby brother home. You do look very happy to have a little brother. Mm-hmm. First kiss from a big sister.
Mm-hmm. I think I thought I had a new toy.
Growing up, Lauren says Brandon loved playing pranks on people, but when it came to career aspirations, that was something he was serious about.
What did he want to do?
He really enjoyed firefighting, I guess just helping people in some way, shape, or form, like police force, things like that.
She says Brandon was smart, but struggled socially.
Do you remember how old you were when you noticed any difference with Brandon? When you started realizing that he wasn't quite like everybody else's little brother?
Early childhood, definitely. I was under the age of 10 for sure. Maybe 7-ish.
What do you think you first noticed?
Him being really stubborn and disobedient in a sense.
And she says he had trouble making friends.
He was almost looked down upon or looked at as if he just didn't fit in, and that was hard.
Was he lonely?
I'm sure.
So lonely, says Lauren, that he would tell stories and make things up just to get attention.
I don't think he ever thought that he was telling a story or lying. It was just, I can do this or I can do that or, I can get this. And it's like, okay, let's come back down to earth and let's figure out whether or not it's reality.
Scott and Janet had long been aware of Brandon's struggles. They took him to see numerous specialists. And when Brandon was in high school, he was diagnosed with Asperger's, a developmental disorder affecting his ability to communicate and at times read social cues. Now, Asperger's falls under autism spectrum disorder.
With Asperger's, I think it's really difficult for him to be aware of how he's presenting himself and what he's saying and how he's saying things and how he's reacting to certain things or not reacting and whether or not he's doing what people would consider the norm.
So when Lauren called Brandon, then 25, shortly after they both learned of their parents' deaths, his unusual reaction, she says, was usual for him.
How is he dealing with it?
In his normal manner, which is, very emotionless. When he's sad, kind of just keeps it all in.
But it was a red flag to police, who soon zeroed in on Brandon. The day after the murders, before Lauren even got to see him, Brandon ended up in a police interrogation room for 9.5 hours.
And he went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you think he was so willing to talk to the police?
Probably the same reason I was, like just wanting answers.
Brandon was again called in for questioning just over a week after the murders. Lauren drove him to the station.
Did the investigators give you any idea that your brother was a suspect?
Mm-mm.
He was by then, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
If you had known what was going on, if you had any idea your brother was a suspect, would you have taken him over there so willingly?
I wouldn't have taken him there, period. We would have had an attorney.
After nearly 4 hours, police arrested Brandon for the murder of his parents.
I think I lost my voice and my breath for a little bit. I was like, what? Why?
Just over a week after suddenly losing her parents, Lauren now had to deal with the news that her brother had been arrested and charged with the murders.
I think I just started to hyperventilate and was like, I don't even know what's going on.
In addition to Brandon, a man named Felix Valverde had also been arrested and charged. Lauren had never heard of Felix Valverde, but Brandon and Felix were both members of a group called the Clampers, a more than century-old fraternal organization dedicated to the historical preservation of the American West. But Clampers are also known for enjoying getting together to drink.
I think the only reason he was a part of that was because he thought he would have friends.
Did your parents ever express concern about any of these people that your brother might be hanging out with?
Mm-mm. I never heard about them.
Brandon was staying at his parents' house, but on the night of the fire, he was out working the graveyard shift as a security guard.
And there are people who can say he was there.
Yep, he has an alibi. His boss or his superior confirmed he was there.
But his alibi didn't seem to matter to investigators. They believed that Brandon paid Felix to commit the murders. The alleged motive? To inherit his parents' money. But Lauren couldn't make sense of it. She says Brandon loved their parents and actually benefited more with their parents alive.
They paid his bills. My brother didn't even know the value of $1.
If anything happened to your parents, was your brother going to inherit anything?
Not that he knew of, not that I know of either.
Police first began looking at Felix after Brandon, in his first interview with police, mentioned other friends, but curiously failed to mention Felix. That led to a search of Felix's apartment, where their suspicions paid off. They found keys to the Pettit home, Scott and Janet's wallets, a box of ammunition, and 7 spent shell casings concealed in a planter outside. Significant because Brandon's parents were shot a total of 7 times. Hours later, police called Brandon in for that second taped interview and confronted him.
How would he come up with the keys to kill your parents? I don't know. You know why? You gave them to him. I didn't give him.
But the detective told Brandon that Felix was telling a different story.
Felix says you gave him the keys. And the keys both fit the garage door and the front door, Brandon. If you think for a minute that anybody is going to believe your story, including your sister, you're mistaken. And you know what the thing about Felix is in your life that makes him more believable? He's remorseful. I mean, remorseful. How does that mean? Sorry he did.
The detective also told Brandon that he had phone records showing that Brandon and Felix spoke the night of the murders.
What was that about? On my break, I was asking him what we were doing for the weekend.
Despite the pressure, Brandon repeatedly denied having anything to do with the deaths of his parents.
I don't know who killed my parents. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No. Yes. No.
But in that second interview, Brandon made incriminating admissions. Brandon said that he gave Felix bullets sometime in the weeks leading up to the murders.
He had asked me for the box of bullets that I had because my .22 hasn't been fired in 2 years because I don't have a bolt for it.
And he admitted giving Felix $100 just days after the murders. But the most jaw-dropping part of Brandon's story was when he told detectives that about a month before the fire, Felix had threatened to kill Brandon's parents unless Brandon paid him $10,000.
And you haven't told us something that is this important, and you're telling us now? I'm remembering a lot. You know what? And where'd you go? Did you go to the police station? No, I went back to my parents' house. Why did you go to the police station? I don't know. Instead, you give a box of bullets? And I can see that was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. That's a bad excuse. That's an even worse lie.
Even if it was the truth, why would Brandon wait 9 days after the murders to tell them all of this?
Why? I didn't want to talk to anybody. Did not want to solve that crime? I wanted to do it myself. Oh, wow, that's a new one. What did you do? I wanted to find out who did it myself.
And more damaging, why did Brandon remain friendly with Felix, not only after the threat was made, but even after Brandon's parents wound up dead?
So he tells you he's going to kill his parents, you give him ammunition, and then you give him $100. He said he had paid his bills and needed some money. I had $100, so I figured I'd help him out until he got paid. To the guy that just was threatening to kill with your parents if you didn't pay him money, you're helping him out. In fact, you're hanging out with him afterwards, all buddy-buddy. I didn't believe he would actually do it.
Investigators were convinced that Brandon was the mastermind behind his parents' deaths. But Martha Carlton Magana, an attorney appointed to represent Brandon after his arrest, says the interview proves nothing.
He didn't have anything to do with it. He doesn't know what happened.
She says detectives weren't interested in the truth, and they lied to Brandon when they told him that Felix had already confessed.
They've already decided he's the suspect, and they're really trying to feed him a lot of information so that he'll regurgitate it back.
She says the detectives knew Brandon had Asperger's.
And this whole Asperger's thing, I'm not buying any.
And suggests they mishandled the interview.
Do you believe they were taking advantage of his condition?
I think they were doing what they always do, and because of Brandon's condition, he was more vulnerable to that kind of interrogation. Everything in that second interview needs to be taken with a grain of salt.
Lauren agrees and firmly believes her brother's innocent.
He really is a good person.
Does this seem at all in your brother's character to have your parents killed?
Not at all.
But Brandon's statements in that interview wouldn't be the only hurdle that his defense would have to overcome. A young woman by the name of Sarah Wilson had surfaced. In the weeks leading up to the murders, she says Brandon had been promising her the world, things that only money could buy. Sarah Wilson and Brandon Pettit met when they were in high school. But Sarah says they reconnected online in the summer of 2013, shortly before the murders.
We got to talking, seeing how we were doing throughout the years.
Brandon had just gone through a messy breakup with a woman named Susan Sanchez. Susan was pregnant with Brandon's child.
How did your brother feel about becoming a dad?
Very excited. My family was everything to him, so.
But with his relationship with Susan over, Brandon was apparently ready to shift his attention to someone new.
I had some inclinations that he had a little crush on me, but I didn't pursue anything with them. I didn't give him any hints that I was attracted to him in that way.
That didn't seem to deter Brandon, who ended up making her an offer she says she couldn't refuse.
He had mentioned that his parents were going to buy him $1 million home in Georgia, and he said that I could move in with him. I, of course, said yes. Who wouldn't want to live in $1 million home? I was going through a lot of stuff in my personal life. I just really wanted to get out of California.
As enticing as it all was, Sarah suspected it might be too good to be true.
I took it with a grain of salt. I didn't think it was really going to happen.
But Sarah says Brandon would send her real estate listings daily.
Oh, the houses had a shower the size of my bedroom now. They were just gorgeous.
And he showed her the email conversation he was having with a realtor.
Which kind of made me think, okay, this is really gonna happen.
And the promises didn't stop there.
He one day mentioned that, oh, my mom, seeing how happy I am, how excited I am to be moving with you, that after we move, she will open a boutique for you to run yourself. I did find it kind of strange that his parents would spend this amount of money on a business for me when I had never met them.
Sarah says she thought she'd finally meet them since Brandon told her his parents had bought plane tickets to take them all to Atlanta to look at homes. But a couple of days before that supposed trip, Sarah received a strange text from Brandon.
I got a text out of nowhere from Brandon saying, "You're getting a boob job for Christmas, LOL."
The text came in at 10:43 p.m. on August 7th. Just a few hours later, Brandon's parents were discovered dead. He delivered the news to Sarah the next morning.
I got a text from Brandon saying my parents died last night in a house fire. I didn't press them for any information. I just figured that's a touchy subject. His parents had just died.
On August 9th, after Brandon's first interview with detectives, Sarah says he called her and they met up.
He told me that his aunt had canceled the flight tickets and they just want to keep that under wraps, so don't tell the detectives that. I thought that was very odd. That's when I started to think, something's kind of weird.
Sarah would later learn there were no airline tickets, no trip to Georgia planned, and Brandon's parents didn't die in a house fire. They were murdered. It wasn't long before detectives showed up at her door.
They just started asking me questions about Brandon.
She told them everything about those $1 million homes, the supposed trip to Georgia, and the text Brandon sent promising her a breast enhancement just hours before his parents were killed. For police, it amounted to a financial motive for murder. But Lauren Pettit believes it actually amounts to nothing.
Do you believe your brother really told her those things?
Possibly, but that was just who my brother was.
Brandon's defense attorney agrees and says Brandon's conversations with Sarah shouldn't be given much weight at all.
That was a fantasy. He was playing out with a girlfriend to impress her, which he'd always done.
Brandon actually called a realtor and actually pinpointed some houses. Is it possible that Brandon decided he was going to make that fantasy come true and killed his parents so he'd have the money to actually buy that house?
I don't see that as being realistic. I see that as being something that Brandon did in order to impress friends.
What about the fact, though, right before his parents died, he had texted Sarah Wilson and said, for Christmas, you're going to get breast enhancement surgery. Just a coincidence, Martha?
Yeah.
Honestly?
Yeah. I'm not sure it was the first time he said it either.
Somebody could say, Brandon lies a lot. He lies to girlfriends, he lies to the police if you're right. How do you know when to believe Brandon then?
You don't. Brandon lies a lot and very badly. There's no question about that. So you look to the evidence.
And hard, definitive evidence directly tying Brandon to the murder of his parents, says Martha, just isn't there. Lauren Pettit stood by her brother Brandon.
He's so much bigger than I am.
As he awaited trial, convinced of his innocence. But as the case dragged on, she was all too aware there was a possibility she might end up losing him too.
It's a huge burden on your shoulders, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not really about me anymore. My brother depends on me.
What do you think your parents would want you to do?
I mean, fight for my brother, absolutely, because that's what they would do. But take care of myself.
On the 4-year anniversary of her parents' deaths, we were with Lauren as she made the trip to the cemetery. On that same day, she visited Brandon in jail as well.
Instead of it being face-to-face, it's video visitation, and I see him on a screen for 30 minutes.
One court delay after another. It was 7 long years from the time of the murders of Scott and Janet Pettit to when Brandon Pettit's trial finally began on September 1st, 2020. Cameras were not allowed in court. Defense attorney Robert Winston was now representing Brandon, and he was up for the challenge.
I've had a lot of cases over the years, so the basic case wasn't that unusual. The fact that Brandon had Asperger's, that put a new dimension on the case.
Brandon was initially supposed to be tried alongside Felix Valverde, but about a month before the trial, the judge made a rare finding that Valverde was incompetent to stand trial. That means the man who may have actually done the killing is unavailable to the defense.
How can Brandon be put on trial when the person who police believe actually did the killing is considered incompetent?
That's our law.
I mean, is that fair to Brandon?
Sadly, fairness rarely enters into it.
Valverde was placed in psychiatric treatment with the hope that he might be able to go on trial at a later date. Due to Valverde's still pending case, the prosecutor's office declined our request for an interview. We asked Mary Fulginiti, a CBS News consultant and former federal prosecutor, to analyze the state's case.
You have to look at the totality of the evidence, and as you look at the totality of his statements and his actions, I think it's very difficult to say he did not plan it, he did not plot it, he did not desire it, he did not intend it, he did not want it.
But the physical evidence only connects Felix Valverde. The prosecution began by calling investigators who detailed all that evidence found at Felix's apartment. Scott and Janet's wallets, the box of ammunition, those 7 spent shell casings, and most important, they would argue, keys to the Pettit home.
How would Felix get a hold of the keys to the house? The keys were given to him by Brandon, and that was so that he could access the house. So he'd get into the house and kill his parents easily.
The prosecution also called witnesses who knew Felix and testified that he had obtained a new gun like this one in the weeks leading up to the murders. That gun, however, says defense attorney Robert Winston, was never found.
It was a Western-style .22 revolver. We certainly don't know that that was the murder weapon. It wasn't recovered. Don't know where it is. We don't even know if that type of weapon was consistent with the bullet fragments that were found in the bodies. There was no hard evidence of anything.
They don't know if a .22 was used to kill. The
Well,
Pettits.
what they do know, though, and this is critical in a circumstantial evidence case, they do know they were shot 7 times. They found 7 .22 caliber shell casings in a planter outside of Felix Valverde's house.
In an effort to directly tie Brandon to the murders, the prosecution called Mike Anderson, the Pettits' close family friend. He testified about a conversation he says he had with Brandon a few months before the murders.
He just told me if my parents weren't here, my life would be better.
Mike says he didn't think much of it at the time, but with Scott and Janet now gone and Brandon on trial for their murders, that comment carried a whole new weight.
I felt like I didn't help him, but I had to tell the truth. It was hard, it was sad.
And that wasn't all Mike testified to. He also told the jury that in the days following the murders, Brandon was looking to sell his dad's prized cars, including a 1961 Corvette.
He wanted to sell the vet and move to Georgia. It made me feel very uneasy. It made me question everything.
The prosecution also called Susan Sanchez, Brandon's ex-girlfriend, the mother of his then 6-year-old daughter, who still had a strained relationship with him. She said Brandon once mentioned that Corvette to her, too.
He couldn't wait for his dad to be dead so that it would be all his. And he's also told Susan Sanchez on at least 5 or 6 occasions she testified to that he wanted his parents dead.
And there was more. Susan testified she had an ex-husband whom she had mentioned to Brandon.
And he said, look, if you want to make him disappear, I've got a friend, Felix Valverde, who you can pay $500 to, and your ex will disappear. Coincidences? Too many.
Brandon's high school friend, Sarah Wilson, also took the stand and testified about all those promises Brandon had made her. And the lead detective detailed what Brandon had said in that second interview.
So he tells you he's going to kill his parents, you give him ammunition, and then you give him $100. He said he had paid his bills and needed some money.
It's a circumstantial case. The strongest evidence against Brandon, his own words and actions before and after the murders.
Has there ever been a moment, though, through any of this that you've been wondering, maybe my brother did it?
No, but, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not naive. I still believe that my brother is innocent, but if someone can prove to me that he's not with actual evidence, not just words, then it is what it is, and I'll deal with that.
Brandon did plan and plot the murder of his parents. He wanted the Corvette. He wanted the house. He did it for money.
But would Brandon kill the parents he loved and leaned on? The defense has to raise doubts with their star witness, who knows Brandon best.
You're testifying for someone you love so much, and in your head, all you think about is, what if I say the wrong thing?
Seven years after both of her parents were murdered, Lauren Pettit took the stand to try to save the man accused of killing them, her own brother, now 32 years old.
There's so many things going through your head, and there's no coaching, there's no nothing. You're just, here you go, good luck.
Defense attorney Robert Winston wanted the jury to see a very different side of Brandon and his family.
This was not a family where there was hatred, there was animosity, that there was a motive to kill. It just didn't exist.
Lauren described how important family was to her brother.
It was his whole world.
And the dogs who died in the fire, she says Brandon loved them too.
I have photos and videos galore of him with his dogs. He would skip out on family vacations just to stay home and make sure the dogs were safe and okay.
Lauren also questioned the alleged financial motive, telling the jury that her parents were actually in debt at the time of their death. And that Corvette that Brandon supposedly wanted, she says it was already partially in his name. But perhaps the most crucial part of her testimony casts doubt on the prosecution's theory that Felix Valverde got into the Pettit home with house keys that Brandon gave him.
My parents had an extra large sized dog door on their back sliding glass door, which is how I had gotten into the house the day after they passed. It's how the detective told us he had gotten into the house earlier that day, and he was a much larger man.
So the detective himself went through the doggy door, and that was never considered as the way the killer might have gotten into the house.
Correct.
But then, how did Felix get those keys to the Pettit home?
I think the keys were probably in my parents' wallets.
Lauren says her parents had digital door locks where you punch a code to enter. But in the event the battery-powered locks died, she says, her parents kept spare keys tucked inside their wallets and left those wallets out in the open on the kitchen counter.
Picture it this way. Felix Valverde goes to the house. He crawls in. Now he's inside. He sees a purse. He sees a wallet. He either thinks, I'll get these on the way out, or he picks them up right then. And he goes upstairs and he does what he does. But when he picked up the wallet of Scott Pettit, it had a key in it. When he picked up the wallet of Janet Pettit, it had a key in it.
If Brandon didn't hire Felix, if he didn't ask him to kill his parents, why would Felix do it on his own?
Two motives. One, Felix thought there was money in the house. The other theory is that he heard Brandon say these things about his parents, and he thought that Brandon would be happy with him.
But there was one big problem with the defense's theory. In a section of Brandon's videotaped interview not shown in court, he admitted giving Felix the keys.
I know how he got the keys. You know, okay. How did he get the keys? I got the keys. I never intended him to actually do anything. He was supposed to scare them, okay? Not hurt them, okay? How was he?
It was an admission that could destroy his defense. Brandon actually admitted that he sent Felix to his home to convince his parents to stop contacting his ex-girlfriend, Susan. But because Brandon said it after he had asked for a lawyer, the judge didn't allow it in as evidence. And as bad as it sounds, defense attorney Robert Winston claims that Brandon made it up in an effort to end the interrogation.
It seemed as though Brandon was saying, I'll tell you anything you want to hear, just let me out of here.
Winston was determined to show the jury why they shouldn't believe much of what Brandon said. He called Dr. Laura Geiger, a clinical psychologist appointed by the court, who testified that Brandon's Asperger's could explain his questionable statements and behavior.
Dr. Geiger, does she believe that Brandon's Asperger's autism interfered in that police interview to his detriment?
Absolutely. People with autism take information in differently than we do. So when the police ask a question, there's always the worry, is it really understood?
Winston was feeling optimistic when, after 9 days of testimony from 23 witnesses, the case went to the jury. Deliberations stretched on for about a day and a half, and then a verdict. Guilty. Our camera caught a glimpse of Brandon as he was led out of the courtroom.
How did your brother react to the verdict?
He was shocked and then really scared.
Scared of what?
His future.
4 months later, Brandon was given the maximum sentence, 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. Lauren was devastated.
It was hard not to feel paternal towards her.
She's lost everything, hasn't she?
Really? Yes, she has.
Lauren remains convinced her brother is innocent. She hopes one day Felix Valverde will go on trial. And maybe then she'll get the answers she's looking for.
Do you think Felix Valverde killed your parents?
I think he probably had something to do with it.
Felix has pleaded not guilty, and his attorneys declined our request for an interview. As Lauren begins to pick up the pieces, she sadly no longer has her dog Bailey to comfort her. He passed away in 2019. Now a new friend, Jelly, is helping to put a smile back on her face. And yet nothing and no one will ever fill that void left by the loss of her once close-knit family.
What do you miss the most about your parents?
Everything. My dad's jokes. My mom just tirelessly working to, make sure I'm okay. I would give anything to have them back.
48 hours. Don't miss an episode.
Las Vegas is the adult Disneyland of the world. People come here to play. Adults come here to play. The other side of that is there is a community here that services that glitz and glamour, that go to work 9 to 5, run the banks, run the police department, run the fire department, and have just steady jobs.
That's George, an all-around great guy to hang out with, and he'll help you get the job done.
You're just a very, very kind, generous, and giving person. And that's the George Tife I know.
Well, Shauna was so young at heart, and she was so fun, and she always made me laugh.
She looks like Barbie, blonde, beautiful.
Always had the long hair, just looked perfect, like a little China doll.
Well, George and Shauna met in the casino environment.
He saw this blonde person whizzing past him all the time. She was such a hard worker that he really admired that. She was his world. That was his life. And then when their daughter came around, they were just the cutest trio ever.
We're at the beach. Okay, we're
Maddie's first time at the beach.
turning everybody around.
Turning us around. Maddie was just the light of her life. It was really her #1 priority.
Nice day today.
She was just all in, 100% there.
And then a baby.
They were like a little cocoon. George was so protective. He waited on them hand and foot. He really did.
In the early morning hours on September 29, 2012, Shauna Tiafe would have gotten off work from being a cocktail waitress at a local casino. She went home.
Parked her car in the garage, entered her house. A killer snuck up behind her and beat her to death with a hammer inside her own living room.
Were you worried that someone was targeting casino women?
Yes. We were all so scared
that, this person was still out there.
Was somebody stalking her? Was somebody obsessed with her?
Maybe they're gonna, come after one of us.
I'm Peter Van Sant. Tonight on 48 Hours, Vengeance in Vegas. Shauna Tiafe loved to laugh and sing with her daughter.
When she was with Maddie, it was like nothing else was going on around her. So dedicated and so concerned.
Shauna's murder has been a devastating loss for her sister, Paula Stokes Richards, and her husband, John.
She just laughed at life. She had this innocence.
It's sad because I just miss her. And for something like this to happen to her is just, it's unimaginable.
Shauna Tiafe, a Mormon born in Salt Lake City, was 28 when she moved here to Las Vegas. But to Shauna, Vegas was more than one big glitzy party. It was a city of opportunity. And it wasn't long before she got a glamorous job as a cocktail waitress at one of the hottest casinos in town.
She loved the Palms. I think she really felt like the Palms was a family environment, which might sound contrary to what you would think, but I think the people that worked there were really like family, and they looked after each other.
I never hardly saw Shauna with a frown or anything. She was just so bubbly and laughing at everything.
Cindy, Randy, and Sienna all worked alongside Shauna for about 10 years.
She loved her job, though.
She loved cocktailing.
And customers loved Shauna. She made close to $100,000 a year in salary and tips, often paid in casino chips, which in Vegas is the same as money. In 2002, Shauna hit the jackpot when she met George Tiafe at the Palms. George was a star athlete and homecoming king at his California high school.
Just to look at him, he's very handsome, very charismatic. What more could you ask for?
In fact, George is a West Point graduate who served in the Army Corps of Engineers. Maria and Bernadette are George's sisters.
He likes to serve people. That's what attracted him to being a fireman.
And George is so handsome, he was even featured in this firefighter pinup calendar. The all-American boy, he sounds like.
Yes, he was. He looked like it. He acted like it. He was that guy.
His sisters also say George is a devoted family man who sent money home to help their mom care for their disabled younger sister.
If you need a helping hand, there he is.
George and Shauna started dating.
George was in love?
Oh, yeah. Head over heels. Yeah. She was his world. That was his life.
And life only got better for George and Shauna. Just 1 year into their relationship, Maddie was born.
Hey, there's Daddy. There's Daddy and Mama and little baby. It's all of us.
3 years later, they were married in Hawaii.
Mama and Dada just got married. There's Shauna Castleton. Now she's Tiafe. Look at that dress on Mama. Woo! What a smoking body.
They really suited each other. It was really nice. They're both hardworking people. They're both good-looking people. They made a lovely couple.
But looks, as they say, can be deceiving. After 2 happy years of marriage, things started to change. When George lost money in the housing market crash, Shauna told friends he had become jealous, controlling, and critical of her.
He would tell her that she dressed like a slut when she would get dressed for work in front of Maddie, which of course would tear Shauna apart, for her little girl to hear these things.
Shauna also complained when George brought a homeless man into their lives who he paid to do odd jobs around the house. Her friend, Stephanie Vargas.
She would call him creepy. God, he's so creepy. Why is he around my house?
But George's friend from West Point, Rock Ryder, says he was as kind-hearted as he was handsome, and befriending the homeless was something he had done for years.
Every Thanksgiving, he'd be serving soup to the homeless people. He's just a very, very kind, generous, and giving person.
But even though he had a gracious heart, the strains continued in the marriage, and after nearly 10 years of being together, she had enough and moved into this townhouse. They shared custody of Maddie, but Shauna was reluctant to file for a divorce.
She was sad. Her family was breaking up, and this isn't something that she wanted. She wanted the picket fence and the husband and the daughter. She wanted the fairy tale, and the fairy tale was falling apart.
Determined to save their marriage, Shauna and George both agreed to start seeing a marriage counselor.
I think Shauna was an eternal optimist. You know, she just kept hoping that things were going to get better.
Then, weeks before her murder, Shauna's townhouse was burglarized. Her wedding ring was missing. Strangely, a pair of her bathing suit bottoms were taken. And strangest of all, the robber left something behind. A pair of boxer shorts, size small.
This burglary, did it shake her up?
It did.
But I just don't think that in her mind she ever thought that any harm would come to her.
But in an ominous twist of fate, just 3 weeks later, someone was back in her house, this time waiting for her. It is now the early morning hours of September 29th, 2012. This is Shauna, seen on casino surveillance video, clocking out at 3:01 a.m. These are the last images of her life. After a 30-minute drive, Shauna arrives home, letting herself in through the garage.
She enters into the hallway. It's dark, there's no light.
Dan Long and Terry Miller are investigators with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
She moves towards the stairway to go upstairs to her bedroom.
When suddenly, Shauna was attacked by someone wielding a hammer.
Her hands were up at some point to protect her head and her face. Her fingers were broken, and she was savagely beaten with this metal head of that hammer until she was dead.
At approximately 9 a.m., George and Maddie arrived to pick something up when they walked in and he discovered Shauna's badly bludgeoned body. George immediately called 911.
911 emergency.
I think I need to report a break-in and a murder. My wife is on the floor, bloody, stiff, not moving.
Naturally, George is going to be our #1 suspect. A woman that he's separated from, he finds dead inside of an apartment.
Detective Miller interviewed George in a police car at the scene.
She was lying on the floor.
Okay.
And she was covered in blood. I just want to die.
And she was surprised with what he told her.
What shift did you work yesterday?
A 24-hour shift.
He said he was on call at the firehouse before he picked Maddie up. Maddie had spent the night at her grandmother's house while Shauna went to work.
He had an alibi.
And what did that tell you?
He's not our killer. It's not just Dan and I.
You want a full mag in the weapon? Yeah.
We had our entire team with this.
Up! Muzzle down.
Lead detectives Terry Miller and Dan Long of the Las Vegas Metro Police had their work cut out for them.
Up!
The obvious initial suspect in a case like this is the husband, but George TFA had that airtight alibi.
They learned right away that he was at work at the fire station, and was not the man that killed Shauna.
Shauna's murder was brutal and chilling.
I remember thinking, do we have a sexual predator?
And you got to be wondering to yourselves, do we have some sort of monster out there on the streets?
Yes, we're like, who are we looking for? Are we looking for a male? Are we looking for a female?
But 48 hours into the investigation, detectives get a crucial tip from an unlikely source, William Penix, known as Big Will.
I've been trying to live a straight life under the hands of the Lord.
Big Will had lived in Las Vegas for years, working as a maintenance man at an apartment complex. He got an urgent call from a friend.
He said, Big Will, I need to talk to you.
The friend came to see him and dropped a bombshell. He'd just murdered a woman.
When he told you that he had killed this woman, what was the expression on his face?
He was happy. Happy like he just completed a mission to where he's going to get paid a lot of money. He's going to leave town and live a happy life like that.
Did he tell you how he killed this woman?
Yeah. He told me that he was laughing when he said it. He said, I hit this woman with a hammer over and over and over and over until the hammer broke.
The man who called Big Will was nicknamed Greyhound because he was lean and fast and lived in a tent in the foothills far from the glittering lights of downtown. Greyhound was an ex-con, and Big Will was helping him straighten his life out. But after the two men spoke, Big Will's mission became bringing Greyhound to justice.
This is a damn tragedy. I said, so if I hear this on the news tomorrow morning, the best thing I can do is follow his tracks, try to hunt him down, so that I can try to bring some kind of closure to this woman's family.
A gorgeous cocktail waitress, a mother, brutally murdered in her own home.
That was it, a woman murdered, and Big Will knew exactly what he had to do. He called police. At first, detectives Long and Miller were skeptical.
Initially, I was thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. He is giving the story about this man who lives up in the mountains in a tent, who is homeless, and it's kind of a crazy story.
Crazy, but cops felt they had to check it out. Big Will told them Greyhound often walks miles from his desert tent to this Albertsons grocery store, where he'd been spotted before stealing food. So right away, they went with Big Will to look for him.
I got out of the vehicle and went in to talk to the Albertsons employees in hopes that they would know who somebody named Greyhound that matches this description is.
Big Will knew Greyhound sometimes sold drugs at the Chevron station right next door. Then, a stroke of luck.
I see Greyhound. He says, hey, Big Will, what you doing over here? So I said, wait 1 minute, I'll be right back.
Big Will then whispers into my ear and goes, that's Greyhound.
We got lucky. Through the grace of God, he was there.
I'm like, this can't be happening. I walk outside. I want to get as close as I can to him before he identifies me as a police officer.
Cops identified themselves and immediately find drugs in Greyhound's possession. So they take him to police headquarters.
And he's volunteered to come to our office and help us with our investigation.
Greyhound's real name is Noel Stevens. He denies he has anything to do with Shauna Tiafe's murder.
I have nothing to do with it. It's not me. You have the wrong guy. He tells us that he does live in the desert. He has a tent.
All right, meet you there.
All right.
While Greyhound is held on drug charges, a massive police search is launched to find his campsite.
Terry and I walked in. That fence, we had to climb through that fence. That was tough. This case came down to shoe leather. We ran it all down. Right on top of that little hill was where his tent was.
It was out here, in these rocky desert foothills about 8 miles from the Vegas Strip, which is behind me, the detectives, making their way through this treacherous landscape, discovered some important evidence.
We brought a helicopter with us and a bunch of people to search, and we searched every one of these hills.
Remote.
Remote, yes.
I walked past a small shrub, and rolled up underneath the shrub was a pair of pants and looked out of place.
Detective Sam Smith had found a crucial piece of evidence near the campsite, a pair of Stevens' pants. They were bloody. Police tested them on the spot.
And what did you learn later about the blood on those jeans? Whose blood was it?
That was Shauna Tiafay's blood.
Back at headquarters, police confronted Noel Stevens with what they had found. Then they used an old trick to pry more information out of him.
A lot of people don't know this. Investigators are allowed, I'll use this word, to mislead a suspect.
No, we're allowed to lie.
They bluffed Greyhound, saying someone fingered him for the murder. Stevens stuns the detectives by admitting he killed Shauna Tiafay. But why? More clues were found when police examined Noel Stevens' cell phone.
What kind of numbers do you find on that phone?
Well, we find a guy by the name of George in his cell phone. And when we ask him, who's George, he says, that's my friend, the firefighter.
George was George Tiafay, Shauna's husband. And Noel Stevens was that homeless handyman who had caused friction in the Tiafay marriage.
We looked at each other and
bing, 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 bing. You hit,
Absolutely.
This is Vegas. You just hit all sevens, right?
Yes, we did.
Exactly.
Yes, we did.
There's Mama. She's looking hot with the shades on.
As soon as she heard about the tragic murder of her beautiful sister, Paula Richards, and her husband John immediately had one suspect in mind.
Look at everybody. See us?
We all thought that George was involved, but we couldn't figure out how he did it.
So they decided to call George, who was still standing outside Shauna's townhouse with police.
So I thought, we need to record this.
Hello?
George,
Yes,
this is Paula. Can you tell me what's going on?
Shauna passed away.
And what did they do to her?
God. I don't know. She's laying on the floor with blood on her head.
How is Shauna's body still there?
Yes, I think so. God.
There's Daddy and Mama.
George then hands his cell phone to a grief counselor.
No one else can hear what I'm saying, correct?
Correct.
Paula then makes a startling accusation.
I have my suspicions that her husband may be involved in this based on, many conversations I've had with my sister. I highly suspect that he may be involved.
The day after the murder, the couple caught the first flight to Las Vegas from Nashville.
When we landed on the flight out to Las Vegas, we had both shifted into this investigator mode.
While John and Paula were conducting their amateur investigation, Detectives Miller and Long were continuing their professional one.
You see the telephone poles? Right along there.
Armed with a good luck charm, a casino chip that belonged to Shauna.
And I said, I want you to hold on to this because this has allowed me to feel like Shauna is near us. And you can give it back to me when you get an arrest.
Soon into their investigation, detectives had discovered dozens of phone calls between Noel and George before the murder.
You said 87 calls?
That's correct. 87 phone calls in 1 month. That's more than I talked to my husband.
Tiafay and Stevens met years earlier when both were living on this middle-class street. Noel at his sister's house.
This house right here is the sister's house, which is where Noel was living.
And the Tiafes down the block.
Right down here.
Yes. Noel got to know George, asked him if he could do yard work for George.
Cops soon learned from Noel Stevens their relationship was complicated. Noel idolized George.
He genuinely thought that he and George were very, very close and would never turn on one another.
But detectives believed George was manipulating his friend, who may have suffered from mental illness.
He has a pawn. He has an implement, a tool in Noel Stevens, and he's going to use that tool.
Big Will told detectives that George gave Noel Stevens $600 in cash to kill Shauna, with the promise of thousands more to come.
He said, well, he gave me a key to get in this lady's house and I murdered her. And my heart dropped. And I said, what? I said, you just signed yourself a death warrant. You don't know if this man is going to try to kill you or what.
When cops were scouring Noel Stevens' desert campsite, another intriguing clue they found was a barcode tag. They scanned it. It matched the style of hammer used to kill Shauna.
We figure out that Lowe's sells those hammers.
That launched investigators on a tedious mission, reviewing hundreds of hours of video surveillance tape. Finally, they hit pay dirt when they spotted George and Noel Stevens shopping together for hammers.
We have our definite connection between Noel and George.
Stevens was singing to cops like a canary.
So he gave you a roadmap, and you're following it, and you're finding exactly what he said you'd find.
Absolutely.
Right.
Even leading them to where he had buried the murder weapon. This hammer, which broke in two during the brutal attack.
And there was blood on it.
They also discover a possible motive for murder: money.
New floors, new carpet, new bathtub, new sink, new dishwasher.
Boy, Mama's happy about that, huh?
Shauna liked to spend it, and George liked to save it.
There's some financial transactions that appear like he's trying to hide money through his mom.
With the noose tightening on George Tiafe, detectives meet with his family 9 days after Shauna's murder.
So at the end of the interview, I tell Mom and sister that George is involved in killing Shauna.
How do they react to that?
It's traumatic to them.
No, no, no. They're crying. They're telling us that we are absolutely 100% wrong.
Minutes after that conversation, police who had George under surveillance and were monitoring his phone calls overhear his sister calling him. Suddenly, George
jumped back into his truck and took off, quote unquote, like a bat out of hell.
George weaves erratically through city traffic and onto the Summerlin Parkway. He accelerates to 90 miles per hour and smashes head-on into a barrier. Cops believe it was a suicide attempt.
He's trying to end his life right now because he can't face the fact of what's going to come.
Amazingly, George survived the crash because cops say he was wearing a seatbelt. He was rushed to a local hospital where detectives later arrested him.
And I said, George, you're under arrest for the murder of your wife, Shauna Tiafe. And his reaction was simply to look up from his hospital bed and say, okay.
That's when police also charged Noel Stevens with Shauna's murder.
Oh, look at this. There's Shauna Castleton.
Tiafe.
Now she's Tiafe. Wow.
It was a feeling of relief. All we wanted was justice for Shauna.
Are we ready to arraign Mr. Tiafe?
We are.
Detectives believe George Tiafe was just one step away from getting away with it all.
Commit the murder and then do away with Noel. If he can get that done in the right way, he's going to commit the perfect crime.
But George is steadfastly maintaining his innocence.
State versus Noel Stevens.
And prosecutors are worried about their key witness, Noel Stevens.
He's at the heart of the murder conspiracy, right?
He is a very important factor in the case.
He's mentally ill, right? He has a violent criminal history, and he's your star witness?
You know, the defense wants him to be our star witness.
George TFA's defense attorney, Robert Langford, knows how to take command, whether as an actor in front of a live theater audience or before a jury in a Sin City courtroom.
There's circumstantial evidence and there's direct evidence.
And now, Langford is front and center in a case that even a playwright would find difficult to imagine.
It's a good story. It's real interesting, but it's not evidence yet in the case.
Who is responsible for the murder of Shauna Tiafe?
Noel Stevens. Noel Stevens says he is. Noel Stevens beat her to death with a hammer.
Was he hired by George Tiafe to do that?
There's no evidence of that.
It's been 3 years since the murder, and Shauna's family and friends, like Lacey Green, are apprehensive.
I'm not confident. It's very scary not knowing what's going to happen.
I fear that he will be found innocent.
At no point during the communication with the police does George TFA ever mention Noel Stevens.
In his opening statement, prosecutor Mark DiGiacomo knows he has to make Noel Stevens and George TFA partners in crime.
He calls Noel Stevens 87 times in the month of September.
The prosecutor's biggest challenge will be getting a jury to believe George TFA is capable of murder.
You're going up against an all-American boy. That's a tough challenge.
It is. As a prosecutor, it's highly unusual to have the resume of George TFA and then him be a murder suspect.
I think George TFA is someone who had numerous successes in his life.
Pam Weckerly, Assistant Clark County DA, has scrutinized what she thinks makes TFA tick and what may have driven him to murder.
When his marriage is crumbling, I think that's something that he just can't cope with. The idea that he wouldn't have complete control over his daughter and Shauna ultimately.
Unraveling the complicated tale of George TFA's intertwined relationship with Noel Stevens is left to prosecution witnesses. Big Will Penix remembers exactly what Stevens told him the day Shauna was killed.
He said, "I got something to tell you." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "I just murdered a woman." And right then and there, I said, "You got to be a damn fool."
Did you believe everything that Noel Stevens Greyhound told you?
It depends on the day.
Yet Penix admits under defense questioning that trusting what Stevens has to say is a dubious prospect at best.
At a scale of 1 to 10, I would put him at a scale of maybe 1.5.
10 being very honest and 0 being...
1.5 meaning not honest at all. That's correct.
And prosecutors admit that honesty may be the least of Noel Stevens' problems.
He's an alcoholic. He's told a ton of lies before, and he's a multiple-time felon on top of it.
Despite all that, the courtroom falls silent as a very different-looking Noel Stevens, perhaps the most unlikely star prosecution witness in Clark County history, takes the stand.
He looks like a maniac. I literally felt like my heart dropped into my stomach when I saw him walk through that door.
Stevens, who pleaded guilty in 2013 to Shauna's murder, agreed to testify against TFA once prosecutors in a pretrial deal promised not to seek the death penalty against him.
Where did you grow up?
California.
When you get nervous, do you have sometimes a little trouble speaking?
I stutter.
And you guys, are you thinking to each other, are we nuts?
Yes.
I don't know if we're thinking it to each other. We're saying it to each other.
How did you meet George?
But Stevens soon settles in and, prodded by DiGiacomo, recites details of his relationship with Tia Fey.
Are you just doing work for him, or is there
We're
something?
friends.
What kind of things have you done together?
We worked out, stuff like that.
He recounts breaking into Shauna's townhouse 3 weeks before her murder and admits he's the one who left behind those size-small boxers.
Who told you to make it look like a robbery?
George did.
And without a hint of remorse, Stevens coldly describes how he killed Shauna with that hammer.
I hit her in the head.
What happens when you come out that door and you're holding that hammer?
She tells me why I'm doing this.
She says, why are you doing this?
Yes.
Who told you to kill Shauna?
George.
He is a zombie parrot in that he had a response which was always George. George did it. George told me. George.
Itching to cross-examine Stevens, Langford rips right into him, getting the state star witness to admit he not only hears voices, but has visions.
Because I hallucinate.
What kind of hallucinations?
I see Shauna sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yes.
Do you see other people?
Sometimes.
Do you hear voices?
Yes.
Noel Stevens is the craziest person I've ever seen take the stand. What is reasonable doubt, if not Noel Stevens?
I think the more Noel talks, the more believable he is. It seemed impossible to me that he could have fabricated this notion of a conspiracy with that level of detail unless it really happened.
Prosecutors replay some of the most damning evidence, that footage of George Tia Fey and Noel Stevens buying hammers, knives, and other items.
You have this defendant buying 2 hammers in 5 days.
Tia Fey himself sits calmly through the trial, showing no emotion. He never takes the stand.
They have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and they didn't. So there's no reason to put George on the stand.
The only defense witness, Tia Fey's sister, Maria.
In all the years that you've known George, have you ever known him to be a violent person?
Never, ever, ever.
I have no further questions.
Along with Tia Fey's family, friends from his childhood and West Point days are in court to show their support.
I'm here because I'm willing to stand behind and defend George's character.
George is not the person that is being depicted by the prosecutor.
After a week-long trial, hearing from some 40 witnesses, and with 400 exhibits and evidence, 12 jurors will now decide the fate of George Tia Fey. Juror Roy Wright had questions.
Were they just buying these things for Noel to be a handyman with, or were they buying them for a murder?
My fear is that the defense is able to discredit Noel enough that it causes reasonable doubt.
So cute. Oh, look. You can clap. Good girl. La 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 la. La 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 la.
It has been 3 years since Shauna Tia Fey was found brutally murdered, and today her family hopes their long, agonizing wait will end in justice.
I'm just on pins and needles. You know, my stomach has been in knots for days, and I don't think I've ever been so nervous.
A jury will decide if George Tia Fey was the mastermind behind his wife's murder.
George Tia Fey is the evil one.
On one side of the courtroom sits Shauna's family. Some are dressed in her favorite color, pink. On the other side sit George's supporters. His sister Bernadette takes a moment to pray.
He's been called a monster. People call him a monster. It's just ridiculous and shocking.
After 3 long days, finally a verdict.
The clerk will read the verdict. The defendant will rise.
We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, George M. Tiafe, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder, guilty.
Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder, 7 counts in all. George stands silent with the same emotionless stare he has had throughout the entire trial.
Guilty of robbery with a deadly weapon.
His family is simply
Count
devastated.
7, murder with use of...
In your opinion, was an injustice done here?
Yes, because I believe that the evidence showed reasonable doubt.
Paula, who knew from day one that George was behind her sister's murder, is humbled.
It was almost 3 years ago that Shauna was brutally murdered, and we're so happy that justice was served.
Prosecutor Mark DiGiacomo says he never lost sight of his good luck charm, that casino chip that belonged to Shauna and given to him by her family. And for you, what did that chip represent?
It represented their hope of justice. You know, it sat on my computer for 3 years, and when I walked over for the verdict, I put it in my pocket.
Everyone deserves mercy.
At his sentencing, a jury must decide George's fate, life in prison or life with the possibility of parole in as soon as 20 years.
We hope he gets the maximum penalty. George is a controller, a manipulator, and I think the worst hell for him will be staying in prison the rest of his life and not being able to control anything.
Paula takes the stand to remind the jurors of her loss.
Shauna's greatest joy in this world was being a mother. I remember her always running her fingers through Maddie's ponytail, and she would call her little monkey.
I would call Maria.
George's family and friends also speak, hoping their words will persuade the jury to show mercy.
George is one of the best of us. He's hardworking, compassionate. You will not find a better firefighter on the job than George.
I'm George's brother. That's pretty much who I am.
How did you feel about that?
I was proud.
Clerk will read the decision.
The sentence?
Impose a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
George Tiafe will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Next one.
Juror Roy Wright says that while Noel Stevens is troubled, they never doubted his story.
I think the general consensus was he wasn't really smart enough to make up an elaborate story that would fit the timeline so perfectly.
And the jury also believed this witness.
I said, praise the Lord. Justice has been served.
Big Will, who jump-started the investigation.
Is Big Will a hero in this case to you?
He is, and he doesn't believe in being an individual who turns a friend in. But when he heard the story from Noel, he felt a moral conviction to make the phone call. And for that, you know, he is a hero.
With the trial behind them, Paula and John Richards worry about Shauna's daughter, Maddie, who is now 11 years old. She has lost both of her parents. Maddie lives with George's mom, but Paula and John visit her often.
I'm sure she was hoping her daddy would come home, but when she's old enough, I'll explain to her why that's not the case and why it shouldn't be the case.
Oh, what fun it is to ride one horse open. This is her first big dress.
Sometimes when we're talking about Shauna with Maddie, I can tell when Maddie's reflecting in her face that she laughed a lot with her mom. I can't explain it, but I know that Maddie found a lot of laughter, you know, with Shauna.
You're so pretty. What a pretty girl.
Day 8 in the Alex Murdaugh. Day 9 of the double Week 3 of the Alex Murdaugh. 100 hours of testimony.
This is the 14th day of the double
trial
murder.
drags into Week 4, a looming
Day
concern.
17. Now the defense called more witnesses.
Day 22 of the Alex Murdaugh.
Week 6, Day 25, and the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh continues in Colleton
Alex
County.
Murdaugh's on trial for the double homicide of his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, near the dog kennels of their family's hunting estate. Local media has called it the trial of the century in South Carolina. It has attracted media from across the world.
Their family.
Alex Murdaugh used to be a really predominant lawyer in South Carolina and is a member of this very powerful legal dynasty.
On the evening of June 7th, 2021, his son Paul Murdaugh was standing in a small feed room in some kennels they had on the property. The defendant over there, Alex Murdaugh, took a 12-shade shotgun and shot him in the chest and the shoulder. But after that, another shot went up under his head and did catastrophic damage.
The lead prosecutor for the state is Creighton Waters.
Just moments later, he picked up a .300 Blackout AR-style rifle and opened fire on his wife, Maggie, pow pow, and killed her instantly.
Alex Murdaugh's claim is that he ate dinner with his family, took a nap on the couch. He goes to visit his mother, comes home just after 10 p.m. and finds his wife and child shot and killed.
This is Alex Murdaugh. My wife and child shot badly.
Copy, I'm going on scene.
His immediate reaction was to start telling me about an incident that had happened with his son with a boating accident.
My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. I know that's what it is.
I'm Seth Stoughton. I'm a law professor at the University of South Carolina. Paul Murdaugh was on a boat with some other individuals. There was drinking. The boat crashed and one of the individuals on the boat, Mallory Beach, was killed.
He told you that it was just random vigilantes from the boat case of which there is no evidence whatsoever.
They were alleging that Alec wanted to murder his wife and son because he wanted to hide the fact that he'd been stealing millions of dollars from his law firm and his clients for years.
This is a spreadsheet referencing each client and the amount that was stolen from each client. $225,073.46, $112,500, $338,056.14.
And why did y'all have to pay all that money back?
Because Alec had stolen it.
The facts are what matter here. The facts.
Murdaugh's got some heavy hitters on his side. Dick Harpootlian is the Johnny Cochran of South Carolina.
Did he murder his wife and son?
No.
Does he have any idea who did?
No. There's no eyewitness. There's no fingerprints. There's no forensics tying him to the crime. None.
The prosecution has had one major smoking gun in its case, and it's Paul Murdaugh's video that he took at 8:44 p.m.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth. Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Did you recognize any voices on that video?
Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
You recognize Alex's voice?
Yes, sir.
How will they explain that Alec was actually at the dog kennels 5 minutes before the murder when he claims to have been sleeping?
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
You continued lying after that night, did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Would you ever do anything to harm Maggie?
I would never hurt Maggie. I did not kill Maggie. I did not kill Paul.
The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh. Verdict, guilty.
It doesn't matter how prominent you are. If you do wrong, if you break the law, if you murder, then justice will be done in South Carolina.
It was a field trip to a ghost town. Off a country road, the procession slowly up the long driveway of the imposing property. This convoy held the jury in the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. This is Moselle, the hunting lodge of the Murdaugh family. Alec, his wife Maggie, and sons Paul and Buster. The jury was taken to the dog kennels and the small feed room where Paul had been shot at close range with a shotgun. A few yards away, Maggie was shot several times with a .300 blackout rifle. Neither weapon has ever been found. There was a time when this estate reflected the vast power and prestige of the Murdaugh legal dynasty. Now the withered grounds seem to echo Alex Murdaugh's steep fall from grace. From a rich, powerful lawyer to an admitted drug addict,
Oxycodone, Oxycontin.
thief,
I stole money that was not my money.
and convicted murderer.
Verdict, guilty.
Alex, did you tell your wife inside?
What do you think of the verdict, Alec? It's inside of my car. You're
This is where Alex Murdaugh's life unraveled on June 7th, 2021.
This is your wife and son?
And son.
Okay.
I knew it was really bad.
That night, when Murdaugh was interviewed by investigators, he was quick to offer up an explanation for the murders of his wife and son.
My son Paul was in a boat wreck. There's been a lot of negative publicity about that, and there's been a lot of people online just really vile stuff.
The crash that would kill 19-year-old Mallory Beach happened about 2:20 a.m. on February 24th, 2019.
911, where's your emergency?
We're in a boat crash on Arthur Street.
When a boat carrying 6 young friends smashed into a bridge, Connor Cook made the frantic call to 911.
There's 6 of us and one is missing.
Okay, who's missing?
Female Mallory Beach is missing.
Okay.
She's in the water.
She was just this wonderful, fun-loving, happy girl. And everybody loved her.
Lynn Revis and her niece Mallory were extremely close.
You always got a hug hello and a hug goodbye. And the last thing she told me was she loved me.
In piecing together events, investigators learned earlier that night, 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh used his older brother Buster's ID to buy beer at this convenience store.
And if you look at the video footage, when Paul comes out of the store, he's holding the beer up. He's celebrating.
After staying at a party for several hours, the group took the Murdaugh family's boat to this bar, where Paul and Connor had more to drink around 1 a.m.
But they went in, pounded a couple of shots.
Michael DeWitt is an author and editor of the Hampton County Guardian, part of the Gannett USA Today network.
Somewhere around 1:30, see the video footage of them leaving the boat dock. It was kind of a sad, touching moment when you see Mallory and her boyfriend. I think it's the last moment that anybody captured an image of her alive.
It was around 1:15 when they took off again on the boat.
Paul was just driving, doing donuts and just...
Passenger Miley Altman told investigators tempers were running short.
And so Connor starts driving for a little bit, and then Paul, he stops Connor, and he's like, no, this is my boat, let me drive. I saw the bridge coming.
What bridge is it? Paul, what bridge is it?
First responders' dash cam video captured the mayhem.
All right, where's everybody else at? Everyone's at the bridge, at the bottom of the bridge.
Everybody was crying, scared, shocked, just worried about their friend.
Then Beaufort County Deputy Sheriff Stephen Domino was one of the first on the scene. After Domino got Mallory's distraught boyfriend Anthony Cook into his patrol car, Paul Murdaugh came into sight.
He was walking up from where the boat was.
You get that right there away from me.
He actually tried to rush through me to get to Paul because I guess he saw him smiling.
Paul's smiling while Anthony's girlfriend's missing in the water.
Right.
Bro, you smiling like you're funny. My girlfriend's gone, folks.
That's when Anthony Cook definitively identified the person he said was driving the boat.
Y'all know Alex Murdaugh?
Oh, yeah, I know that name.
That's his son.
That's who driving the boat?
Good luck.
That's when he indicated that he couldn't be touched.
Mallory's body was found a week later.
And in the weeks after that, we're just waiting. Is someone going to make an arrest? Is there going to be a admission of guilt or responsibility?
We're in a boat crash.
I think that from day one, ground zero, the effort was, what can we do to get Paul out of this?
Who do you think is responsible for Mallory's death?
I think Paul Murdaugh was.
A month after the fatal boat crash, frustrated that there was no arrest, Mallory Beach's family filed a wrongful death suit against members of the Murdaugh family, which allowed them to depose the survivors about what happened that night.
Paul was allegedly acting rash and reckless.
In his deposition, Paul's friend Connor Cook said that the morning of the crash, he didn't tell investigators that Paul was driving the boat because he was afraid. And while at the hospital, he says he was told by Alex Murdaugh that he didn't need to tell anyone who was driving.
Alex reportedly went from room to room to try to communicate with the other boat crash passengers and get them all on the same page.
At the hospital, several hours after the crash, Paul's blood alcohol level was 3 times over the legal limit.
He was getting belligerent with the nurses, staff, according to court records, just being loud and troublesome.
But that morning and for weeks to come, many felt that Paul Murdaugh was not treated like a suspect in a crime.
We didn't think he was going to be charged.
Why?
Because it was taking so long. We just didn't think we'd see that day.
Nearly 2 months after the boat crash, Paul was charged with causing the death of Mallory Beach. He pleaded not guilty and remained free after posting bond, and the Murdaugh name began to tarnish. 2 years passed, and on June 7th, 2021, as Paul Murdaugh was awaiting trial in the death of Mallory Beach, gunfire erupted on the Murdaugh family estate.
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road.
At 10:06 p.m., a panic-sounding Alex Murdaugh called 911, saying he had just arrived home to find his wife of nearly 28 years, Maggie, and their son Paul shot.
Is he moving at all, your son? I know you said that she was shot, but what about your son?
They're not, neither one of them's moving.
Maggie's friend, Caroline Price, called her godson Buster when she heard the terrible news.
I said, please tell me this isn't true. And he said, yes, ma'am, Miss Caroline, it is. And he immediately, without prompt, said it was premeditated and revenge. They were trying to say that it was associated with the boat crash.
That someone was angry at Paul.
Yeah. Right.
Due to the Murdaugh family's close ties with local law enforcement, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED, the state's top investigative agency, took over the case.
It was amazing to me how quick this rumor mill started.
Maggie's friend Shelley West heard about the murders from a friend.
I just said, do you think Alec did it? And he said, no, there were 2 guns on the scene.
But it actually crossed your mind that he might have done it?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first initial reaction. A lot of times the husband's the first suspect.
And Caroline says she had a strange conversation with him after Maggie and Paul's funeral.
He talked a lot about Paul. The fact that he wasn't going to get his day in court, he wasn't going to get to clear his name.
Murdaugh offered a $100,000 reward as rumors and speculation swirled. Reports at the time raised questions about their marriage and claimed that Maggie was consulting with a divorce attorney.
Marion, her sister, asked me, do you know anything about this? And I said, no. And she said, She never said anything to me, and she tells me everything.
Maggie never mentioned there was any trouble in the marriage.
Mm-mm.
At a hearing a few months later, I questioned the Murdaugh family attorney Dick Harpootlian about the Murdaugh's relationship.
Were there any problems in Maggie and Alex's marriage?
Absolutely none. None. And trust me, I was with them for almost 2 years. Always affectionate, always courteous, just a picture of a domestic bliss.
And as for the theory that the murders were in retaliation for the boat crash, Maggie's friends say she never mentioned any threats against their family.
She talked about how unkind everybody was and mean.
The looks and the sneers.
And they didn't seem to feel unsafe. I mean, they were still carrying on with their normal routine, day-to-day activities and things.
As investigators tried to figure out who would want Paul and Maggie Murdaugh dead and why, a call came into 911 that another member of the family was under attack.
Somebody stopped to help me, and they tried to shoot me.
And it's almost been a case of episodic television where tune in this week and we'll see what's next from Hampton County, home of the Murdaughs.
Three months after the shooting deaths of Maggie and Paul, Alex Murdaugh again called 911, this time claiming he'd been shot.
Somebody stopped to help me, and they tried to shoot me.
Alex Murdaugh told investigators he was changing a flat tire right here on this rural road when a person in a pickup truck passed by, asked Alex if he was having car trouble, and then shot him in the head.
Murdaugh's conversation on the way to the hospital was captured on police body cam.
You know what kind of gun it was? I don't know what kind of gun it was, but it sounded like a shotgun.
On September 6, 2021, 2 days after being shot, Alex Murdaugh released this statement. "I have made a lot of decisions that I truly regret," he said, and announced he was leaving the law firm.
Alex Murdaugh put out a statement saying he's going into rehab.
Alex Murdaugh said he had been addicted to opioids for 2 decades. It wasn't only claims of drug abuse now staining Murdaugh's reputation. He was also accused of stealing millions from his own law firm and was asked to resign the day before he was shot.
Friday, the law firm has a come to Jesus meeting with him. We know you're allegedly stealing money, you're out. Saturday, the reported shooting. Monday, Alex releases a statement saying, "I'm going into rehab."
Then came the even more bizarre news that Murdaugh had allegedly hired this man, his distant cousin Curtis Smith, to shoot him.
He wanted you to kill him.
Yeah, he wanted me to kill him.
Authorities say Murdaugh wanted his killing to look like murder so his surviving son Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance payout. Smith says he refused.
Yeah. Ain't happening.
It's unclear exactly how Murdaugh came to be shot.
Why did you leave the scene?
I didn't know anything else to do.
Smith was charged in connection with the shooting but has not entered a plea. On September 16, 2021, facing charges of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and filing a false police report, Alex Murdaugh turned himself in.
The fact that Murdaugh sat in a chair in a jumpsuit with handcuffs is something I've never seen in my lifetime.
Alex Murdaugh was released on bond and allowed to go back to rehab. While Murdaugh was there, investigators were looking into all of his business dealings and the suspicious death of this woman, Gloria Satterfield.
Gloria was the housekeeper for the Murdaugh family for more than 20 years.
Ronnie Richter is an attorney for the Satterfield family.
She literally helped raise Alex Murdaugh's sons, Paul and Buster.
In 2018, the 57-year-old died after a fall at the Murdaugh estate.
What's been reported is that she was at the house that day on the front steps. The dogs got a little rambunctious and gave her a push, and she fell down the stairs.
Satterfield's death was ruled natural, and no autopsy was ever performed.
There's nothing natural about a 57-year-old woman falling down a flight of steps and dying from head trauma.
At Gloria's funeral, Murdaugh did something very odd, says Richter. He recommended Gloria's sons file a wrongful death lawsuit against him. Murdaugh even steered them toward an attorney, his friend, Corey Fleming.
A lot of trust was placed in both Alec and in Corey to do the right things. And it really went south from the outset.
Court documents show a $4.3 million payout by Murdaugh's insurance company, but none of the money ever went to Gloria's family.
Where did that money go?
Well, allegedly it went into Alex Murdaugh's pocket.
Alex Murdaugh was charged with 2 felonies for his role in the Gloria Satterfield insurance fraud. This time, a judge ordered him to be held without bond. As Murdaugh sat in jail, he was indicted on dozens more charges for defrauding clients out of millions of dollars. And then in July of 2022, more than a year after the grisly murders,
Disgraced South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh was indicted today in the high-profile murders of his wife and son last year.
Alec Murdaugh was charged with killing his wife Maggie and son Paul. Maggie's friends were relieved that the case was moving forward.
I was kind of like, phew,
Yeah.
finally, and maybe we're going to get some answers.
Alex Murdaugh! Why did you kill your wife and your son?
On January 25th, 2023, 19 months after Maggie and Paul were gunned down near the dog kennels at their family hunting estate,
That the defendant, Alex Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels.
prosecutor Creighton Waters began laying out the state's case against Alec Murdaugh.
But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pocket, that he was there. He was at the murder scene with the 2 victims.
I could see Mr. Murdaugh down at the end of the driveway.
Central 717 scene has secured both gunshot wounds to the head.
First responders described the harrowing scene captured by their body cams.
The male victim was close to a small shed in the dog kennel on the left. There was a large deal of blood that had pooled around his body.
Turn around for me.
I don't have any.
Okay, yes sir, I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son?
And son. It's official that they're dead?
Yes sir, that's what it looks like.
Investigators interviewed Murdaugh in a patrol car.
My boy over there, I could see it was.
Murdaugh said he spent time with Paul earlier in the evening, riding around the property. After Maggie got home, he dozed off on the couch, and when he got up, there was nobody around.
I called Maggie, didn't get an answer. Maggie's a dog lover, and I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I left to go to my mom's. My mom's a late-stage Alzheimer's patient.
His visit with his ill mother would become his alibi. Murdaugh told investigators when he returned around 10 p.m., there was still no one home, so he drove down to the dog kennels. That's when he found Maggie and Paul.
I tried to turn Paul over first, then I went to my wife, and I could see. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
When you first saw Paul, you said you tried to...
Detective Rutland interviewed Alec Murdaugh that night and told the jurors she noted despite his claim of touching the blood-soaked bodies of his wife and son, he appeared clean.
How would you describe the defendant's hands when you saw them?
They were clean.
How would you describe his t-shirt?
Clean.
Did those clothes appear to be fresh?
They did.
Like they just come out of the laundry?
It could be.
Maggie and Paul died from multiple gunshot wounds. Daily Beast senior national reporter Pilar Melendez shared the investigators' findings.
So Paul was shot first, and he was shot twice with a shotgun. Paul was found here next to the feeding room. Very close by, right here is where Maggie was found.
Maggie was killed with a .300 blackout rifle and suffered 5 gunshot wounds. A crime scene specialist described her final moments.
The shooter was right here.
The second shot was not as close, but it still wasn't a long distance. It was approximately here, into the crown of the head.
3 days after the murders, building their timeline, investigators talked to Alex Murdaugh again.
We sat down, we ate supper, and we hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too. I stayed in the house, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
The last time that you saw Paul and Maggie's when y'all were eating supper?
Yes, sir.
The Murdaughs were avid hunters and had more than 25 weapons on the property.
I saw one over here.
During a search,
There's one to your right.
SLED agents found spent shell casings
Yeah, 300, yep. Yeah.
and ammunition that matched the bullets that killed Maggie and Paul, but the murder weapons were never found. Maggie's cell phone was also missing. The day after the murders, investigators found it here on the side of the road, half a mile from the property. SLED analyzed the data from Alex, Maggie, and Paul's cell phones. At 7:56 p.m., Paul sent this Snapchat video of his dad to a friend. Paul is heard laughing in the background.
So around 8:30, Paul's phone starts moving towards the dog kennels. He also is calling and texting two friends then, responding to Snapchats until about 8:40 when he gets on a 4-minute phone call with his friend Rogan Gibson.
Rogan Gibson told investigators their phone call was about his dog who was staying at the kennels. Rogan thought he heard Alec in the background.
That immediately sets a red flag for law enforcement because that totally messes up Alex's timeline. And how could he be at the dog kennels at 8:40 when he claims he was sleeping?
All the responding units to Moselle Road.
2 months after the murders, agents interviewed Alex Murdaugh again, this time at a SLED office. They asked him if he went down to the kennels that night.
I've got information that you were heard in the background. Was it you?
No, sir. Not if my times are right.
Who do you think it could have been?
I have no idea.
In November of 2022, there was a breakthrough in the investigation.
Get back! Get back!
Agents showed Rogan a video of his dog Cash that they had found on Paul's phone. Paul had shot it at 8:44 p.m., minutes before he was killed.
It's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
Come here, Cash.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, Miss Alec.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
The prosecutor says Alec is heard saying, "Come here, Bubba," calling the family dog.
Come here, Bubba. Come here, Cash.
This is a huge piece of testimony because it places Alec in the kennels roughly 5 minutes before prosecutors say Maggie and Paul were murdered.
Authorities believed Maggie and Paul were shot around 8:49 p.m. when their phone screens were locked and never opened again. The prosecutor asked several other witnesses if they recognized Murdaugh's voice on that video.
And I recognize Alex Murdaugh.
Who do you recognize?
Alec.
Did you recognize on that video?
Alex Murdaugh.
And every single witness has said with 100% certainty that that's Alec in the background of that video. And it also completely shatters his alibi.
Alex Murdaugh's car and cell phone data showed he drove to his mom's house shortly after 9 p.m. Between then and until he returned and dialed 911 at 10:06 p.m., he made 10 calls to family and friends, including 5 to Maggie.
Prosecutors basically allege that after killing Paul and Maggie, Alec took steps to cover up and show that he is talking to all of these people, so how could he murder his wife and son?
As to the motive, the state had a theory that a perfect storm was gathering for Alex Murdaugh.
Alec was scared about information coming out that he had been stealing money from his clients and his law firm for years.
On the day of the murders, Murdaugh was confronted by his firm about missing legal fees of almost $800,000. Also that week, he was due in court for a hearing on the boat crash civil case. Murdaugh was being sued for $10 million by Mallory Beach's family.
But the prosecution is alleging that in order to dissuade further questions about his financial crimes and garner sympathy from the community and his law firm, he killed his wife and son. It's the actions of a desperate man.
The state would call Jeannie Seckinger.
After the judge ruled Murdaugh's alleged financial schemes could be brought in, the state called the firm's CFO Jeannie Seckinger.
Was anybody at all concerned about those missing fees after those murders happened?
We weren't, because we were concerned about Alec. We weren't going to go in there and harass him about money when his family had been killed.
Mr. Tinsley.
The Beach family's attorney, Mark Tinsley, also testified and told the jurors in the wake of the murders, the civil case against Alex Murdaugh would have gone away.
If Alec is the victim of a vigilante, nobody's going to hold him accountable. The case would be over.
As the state rested its case, Alex Murdaugh made the risky decision to take the stand.
You lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie.
Have you made a decision as to whether you're going to testify?
I am going to testify. I want to testify.
Against his attorney's advice, Alex Murdaugh decided to take the stand in his own defense.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Under questioning by attorney Jim Griffin, Murdaugh is hoping the jury will look past his lies and believe that now he's telling them the truth.
Did you kill Maggie?
No, I did not kill Maggie. I did not kill Paul. I would never hurt Maggie, and I would never hurt Paul. Ever. Under any circumstances.
After all the testimony identifying him on that kennel video, Murdaugh is forced to admit he was with his wife and son minutes before prosecutors say they were gunned down.
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash. Come here, Bubba. Cash.
Did you continue lying after that night? Did you not?
Well, once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. But once I told the lie, I told my family, I had to keep lying. I went to...
Murdaugh claims he'd been compelled to lie because of an opioid addiction he battled for 20 years, spending tens of thousands of dollars a week and taking up to 60 or more pills per day.
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking.
But he dismisses the prosecution's theory of mounting pressure from his addiction and alleged financial crimes leading up to the murders.
Mr. Murdaugh, on June the 7th, did you believe that your financial house of cards was about to crumble?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Murdaugh, let's start with a few things I think we can agree.
During a 6-hour cross-examination over 2 days, prosecutor Creighton Waters grills Murdaugh.
And you stole all of the money, didn't you?
About his long history of lying to his financial victims.
And Mr. Waters, just to try to get through this quicker, I admit...
I know you want to get through it quicker, but we're not. So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money.
Waters contends it was only because he'd been caught in his lie about being at the kennels that Murdaugh finally came clean.
The reality is you, like you've done so many times over the course of your life, had to back up and make a new story that kind of fit with the facts that can't be denied. Isn't that true, sir?
No, sir, that's not true.
Waters then tries to box him into his new timeline on the night of the murders, zeroing in on 4 minutes between 9:02 and 9:06 when his phone logged 283 steps right before he left to visit his mom.
That's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing? Going to the bathroom?
No, I don't think that I
get on a treadmill?
Went to the bathroom. No, I didn't get on a treadmill.
Jog in place?
Nope, I didn't jog in place.
Jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
Murdaugh reasserts his theory of the murders.
That I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed. Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdaugh and they had anger in their heart.
Throughout the trial, the defense makes the case that Alex Murdaugh was a devoted family man. His son Buster describes a dad who'd coached his Little League teams and was now stricken with grief.
I mean, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
Defense calls Tim Palmbach to the stand, please.
The defense calls a crime scene analyst who, based on blood spatter, position of shots fired, and the fact that 2 different guns were used, says there was more than one shooter.
My opinion is the totality of the evidence is more suggestive of a 2-shooter scenario.
The prosecution disagrees.
This is Alec, the prosecutor, the lawyer, and he's thinking through this. He's thought through this. He's going to use 2 guns because it's going to confuse people that perhaps there were 2 shooters.
In his closing to the jury, Waters argues that all the evidence points to Alex Murdaugh.
Paul and stippling from that first shot, a close range shot, with no indication that he detected a threat from the person who fired that weapon. And why? Because it was him. Maggie sees what happens and she comes running over there. She's running to her baby. She got mowed down by the only person that we have conclusive proof was at that scene just minutes before, and who lied about that very fact.
And he describes how Murdaugh could have cleaned up at the kennels afterwards.
It wouldn't take long to strip down and wash yourself off. Get in that cart and head back to the house.
Here we are with a Mr. Clean theory. He takes a hose and washes himself off and gets in a golf cart, butt naked, I guess, and drives to the house.
Defense attorney Jim Griffin pushes back on the prosecution's theory.
He would have to be a magician to make all that evidence disappear. The shooter's covered in blood. The shooter's gun is covered in blood. Common sense thing here is there were 2 shooters.
Instead, said Griffin, investigators zeroed in on Murdaugh to the exclusion of other suspects because he was an easy target.
Long-time drug problem, his financial issues, misconduct were exposed. Easy target for Sled. The evidence is crystal clear. They started fabricating evidence against Alec.
Griffin tells the jury Sled also presented false evidence to the grand jury when seeking an indictment against Murdaugh.
They came up with a report that says Alec's t-shirt had high-velocity blood spatter on it.
The lead Sled agent testified he had not received an email update that further testing had shown there was no blood.
I did not see that report. I was not made aware of its existence.
Sled failed miserably in investigating this case. And had they done a competent job, that Alec would have been excluded a year ago.
Then he addresses the single most problematic piece of evidence for the defense.
Really, we're back to the lie. Because that's all they have in this case. He lied because he had a closet full of skeletons. But what he didn't lie for is because he was covering up the fact that he killed Maggie and Paul. Alec would not have killed the people he loved the most in the world.
This defendant has fooled everyone. And he fooled Maggie and Paul too. And they paid for it with their lives. Don't let him fool you too.
After hearing from 75 witnesses in more than 5 weeks, the jury deliberates for just under 3 hours before returning with a verdict.
The state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Murdaugh is found guilty of murdering his wife and son.
Guilty. Verdict.
You understand there is a verdict
in the double murder trial.
At sentencing the next day, Judge Clifton Newman gives Murdaugh one last chance to appeal to the court.
I respect this court, but I'm innocent.
Unmoved, Judge Newman sentences him to 2 consecutive life terms in prison.
And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you.
I can't stop thinking about the fact that it is a video on Paul's own phone that really was critical in this case.
Well, I think it is ironic. In a murder case, the victims can't testify, but in many ways they do. Oftentimes they leave something behind that lets you know what happened to him, and in this case it was Paul's video.
Come here, Cash. Come here, Bob. Cash.
It's Paul testifying from the grave.
48 hours. To miss it would be a crime.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?